The autumn wind rustled through the ancient trees surrounding the old family home, its creaking branches whispering tales of bygone eras. The sky, a tapestry of twilight hues, cast long shadows over the moss-covered stones. Lining the pathway to the entrance, the house stood tall and imposing, its weathered fade and shuttered windows, giving an air of abandonment, yet an inexplicable aura of watchfulness. Yamamoto Kenta, a man in his early 40s, stood at the gate, his breath visible in the crisp evening air. He had not set foot in his ancestral home for over 2 decades, ever since his family had left abruptly one fateful night. Now, as he gazed upon the house, memories of a childhood shrouded in mystery and whispered secrets came flooding back. Beside him, his wife, Aiko, clutched her coat tighter, her eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and unease. They had returned to this place at Kenta's insistence, driven by a letter from his late mother that had arrived only weeks after her passing. "Come back to the house," the letter had urged. "There are things you need to understand." The letter, penned in his mother's delicate handwriting, was cryptic yet compelling, leaving Kenta with no choice but to heed her final wish. As they walked up the stone path, the crunch of gravel beneath their feet seemed to echo louder than it should have, a prelude to the eerie silence that awaited them inside. The key turned smoothly in the lock, and the heavy wooden door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit hallway filled with the scent of age and decay. Cobwebs adorned the corners, and dust motes danced in the faint light, filtering through the narrow windows. They stepped inside, the door closing behind them with a soft thud that resonated through the empty halls. Kenta led Aiko through the familiar, yet hauntingly altered space, each room a fragment of his fragmented memories. The living room, with its grand fireplace and antique furniture, seemed frozen in time, a stark contrast to the modern world outside. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors lined the walls, their eyes seemingly following the couple as they moved. Aiko shivered, feeling a chill that was not entirely due to the cold. "Kenta, are you sure about this?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. He nodded, though he felt the same trepidation. "I need to understand what happened here, Aiko. I need to know why we left so suddenly." The study was their final destination, a room his father had forbidden him to enter as a child. The door, unlike the others, was locked, but Kenta retrieved an old, ornate key from his pocket, its brass surface worn smooth by time. As the key turned and the door swung open, the musty smell of old books and parchment enveloped them. Shelves lined the walls, filled with volumes of forgotten law and journals that chronicled the family's history. At the center of the room stood a large mahogany desk, its surface cluttered with papers and an open journal. Kenta approached the desk, his heart pounding in his chest. The journal, its pages yellowed with age, bore his father's meticulous handwriting. He began to read, the words revealing a tale of dark secrets and hidden curses that had plagued his family for generations. The journal spoke of a curse, a malevolent force that had taken root in their home centuries ago. Passed down from one generation to the next, it described strange occurrences, unexplained illnesses, and untimely deaths that had befallen family members. The more he read, the more Kenta understood the urgency in his mother's letter. The curse was real, and it had not been vanquished. Aiko, peering over his shoulder, gasped as she read the words. "We need to leave, Kenta. This place is dangerous." But Kenta shook his head, determination replacing his fear. "No, we need to understand it. We need to find a way to end it, once and for all." As they delved deeper into the journal, a sense of dread settled over them. The final entry, dated the night they had left, detailed a ritual that his parents had attempted, a desperate bid to break the curse. It had failed, and in the aftermath, they had fled, hoping to protect Kenta from the darkness that loomed over their home. Now, it was up to him to finish what they had started. As night fell and the house creaked and groaned around them, Kenta and Aiko prepared to face the malevolent force that had haunted his family for generations. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, but they were determined to uncover the truth and put an end to the curse of the family home. Their resolve was tested as strange occurrences began to unfold, objects moving on their own, whispers in the dark, and the sensation of unseen eyes watching their every move. Kenta discovered an old map hidden within the journal, detailing the layout of the house and marking a hidden chamber beneath the basement. Believing this to be the source of the curse, he and Aiko descended into the depths of the house, armed with little more than their courage and the hope of breaking the cycle of suffering. The basement was a labyrinth of narrow corridors and shadowy corners, each step echoing in the oppressive silence. At the end of the main passage, they found a hidden door concealed behind a stack of old crates. With a deep breath, Kenta pushed the door open, revealing a small, dimly lit chamber. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and in the center of the room stood an altar adorned with strange symbols and ancient artifacts. A sense of malevolence emanated from the altar, and Aiko clutched Kenta's arm, her fear palpable. "This is it," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the pounding of his heart. They approached the altar, and as they did, the symbols began to glow with an eerie light. The room grew colder, and a shadowy figure materialized before them, its eyes burning with an otherworldly fire. The entity spoke in a language they did not understand, its voice a low, guttural growl that sent chills down their spines. Kenta held the journal aloft, reciting the incantations his father had transcribed in a desperate bid to banish the entity. As he spoke, the room trembled and the figure's form wavered. Aiko joined him, her voice steady, despite her fear, and together they chanted the ancient words, their resolve unwavering. The entity let out a deafening roar, and the light from the symbols intensified, filling the room with a blinding radiance. When the light faded, the figure was gone, and the oppressive weight of the curse seemed to lift. Exhausted but relieved, Kenta and Aiko collapsed to the floor, their ordeal finally over. As they made their way back to the surface, the house felt different, its dark aura dissipated. The family home, once a place of dread and sorrow, now seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Kenta knew that their journey was not yet over, but for the first time in his life, he felt a sense of hope. Together, they would rebuild the family home, turning it into a place of light and warmth, free from the shadows of the past. And as they stood in the morning light, watching the first rays of dawn illuminate the old house, they knew that the curse had been broken and their family's legacy had been reclaimed. The first rays of dawn barely penetrated the dense canopy of trees surrounding the old Yamamoto family home. The morning mist clung to the ground, curling around the gnarled roots and stone steps leading to the entrance. As the sun began to rise, the house stood in stark relief against the soft glow of the sky, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch out like grasping fingers. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with a sense of unease. The previous night's encounter with the malevolent entity had left Kenta and Aiko exhausted, but their determination to uncover the truth remained unshaken. The family home, now free from the immediate grip of the curse, still held many secrets, and they knew their journey was far from over. Kenta and Aiko gathered in the kitchen, the room's once familiar comfort, now tinged with a sense of foreboding. They shared a silent breakfast, their thoughts preoccupied with the hidden chamber they had discovered. The journal's final pages had hinted at more than just a single ritual. There were clues to a deeper mystery, one that had been buried for generations. "We need to go back down there," Kenta said, breaking the silence. Aiko nodded, her eyes reflecting the same steely resolve. "We have to understand what truly happened and ensure it doesn't happen again." The basement, now illuminated by portable lamps, revealed its secrets reluctantly. The hidden chamber, with its eerie symbols and oppressive air, felt like a place out of time, a relic of dark rituals and desperate measures. Kenta and Aiko carefully examined the altar, searching for any clues that might explain the curse's origin. Behind the altar, they found a loose stone in the wall. Kenta pried it open, revealing a small, dusty compartment. Inside lay a bundle of old letters and a leather-bound book, its cover marked with the same strange symbols as the altar. Kenta opened the book, its brittle pages filled with handwritten notes and sketches. It was a journal, not unlike his father's, but much older. The entries were written in archaic Japanese, detailing the lives of the Yamamoto ancestors and their dealings with the supernatural. One particular entry stood out. It spoke of a pact made with a dark entity, a desperate attempt to save the family from ruin during a period of famine and war. The terms of the pact were vague, but it was clear that the price paid had been a deeper curse that would plague the family for generations. As Kenta read aloud, Aiko's face grew pale. "This is the source of the curse," she whispered. "We need to find a way to undo it." Their search continued, uncovering more artifacts and documents that painted a picture of a family entwined with dark forces. Each discovery added another piece to the puzzle, revealing the depth of the curse's influence and the sacrifices made to contain it. One document detailed a ritual that promised to break the pact, but it required a rare artifact, a talisman hidden somewhere within the house. The talisman, according to the notes, was the key to severing the family's ties to the dark entity. Determined to find it, Kenta and Aiko scoured every corner of the house. Their search led them to the attic, a dusty and cluttered space filled with forgotten relics of the past. The air was stale and heavy, and the only light came from a single, grimy window. Among the old furniture and boxes, they found a small wooden chest, its lock long since rusted away. Inside, wrapped in a faded silk cloth, lay the talisman, a small, intricately carved stone amulet. Its surface was etched with the same symbols they had seen throughout the house. Holding it, Kenta felt a strange warmth, a sense of hope that had been missing for so long. With the talisman in hand, they returned to the hidden chamber. The instructions for the ritual were clear, but required precision and concentration. They prepared the space, placing the talisman on the altar and surrounding it with candles and herbs. As they began the ritual, chanting the ancient words from the journal, the room seemed to come alive. The air crackled with energy, and the symbols on the walls glowed with an ethereal light. A cold wind swirled around them, carrying whispers of forgotten voices and the faint scent of decay. The talisman began to pulse with a soft, rhythmic light, resonating with their chants. As the ritual reached its climax, a shadowy figure appeared once more, its form less defined than before. The entity's eyes, however, still burned with an unholy fire. It roared in defiance, but the power of the ritual held it at bay. With one final, resounding chant, the talisman emitted a brilliant flash of light, engulfing the chamber in its radiance. When the light faded, the shadowy figure was gone. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a sense of calm and tranquility. The curse had been broken. Exhausted but elated, Kenta and Aiko collapsed into each other's arms. The house, now free from its dark legacy, seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. They had done it. The family's curse was finally lifted, and their home could once again become a place of peace and sanctuary. As they emerged from the basement, the first rays of the new day's light filled the house, casting away the lingering shadows. Kenta and Aiko knew there would be much to do to restore the home, but for the first time in many years, they felt a sense of hope and purpose. Together, they would rebuild, turning the house into a symbol of resilience and renewal. The Yamamoto family's dark history had been laid to rest, and with it, a new chapter began, a chapter filled with light, love, and the promise of a brighter future. The evening sun cast long, golden rays over the Yamamoto family home, illuminating the garden in a soft, ethereal glow. The chrysanthemums in full bloom swayed gently in the breeze, their vibrant colors contrasting sharply with the somber atmosphere that still lingered within the house. Despite the recent victory over the curse, an unsettling feeling of unfinished business gnawed at Kenta and Aiko. The house seemed more alive now, each creak and whisper echoing with stories untold. secrets yet to be uncovered. Kenta sat at the old wooden desk in the study. The ancient journal spread open before him. The talisman lay beside it, its surface still warm to the touch. Aiko entered the room, carrying a tray with 2 cups of tea. She placed it on the desk, her eyes reflecting the same mix of determination and trepidation that Kenta felt. "We did it, Kenta," she said, softly, but there was a note of uncertainty in her voice. "Yes, we broke the curse," he replied, looking up at her. "But I feel there's more to this story." He flipped through the pages of the journal, searching for any overlooked clues. The entries detailed the pact with the dark entity, the rituals performed, and the tragic events that had befallen their ancestors. One entry caught his eye. It was dated several decades after the initial pact, written by another Yamamoto who had also attempted to break the curse. The entry was incomplete, abruptly ending mid-sentence. A chill ran down Kenta's spine as he realized the writer might have been interrupted, possibly meeting a grim fate. "We need to understand what happened to the others who tried to break the curse," Kenta said, determination hardening his voice. Aiko nodded, her resolve strengthening. "We should explore the rest of the house. There must be more hidden documents or clues." They decided to start with the second floor, a place Kenta had rarely ventured into as a child. The narrow staircase creaked under their weight, each step echoing through the silent house. The second floor consisted of several rooms, each filled with the remnants of their past: dusty furniture, old photographs, and forgotten belongings. They entered the master bedroom first. The room was large, dominated by an imposing four-poster bed. Covered in a thick layer of dust, the air was stale, and the heavy curtains blocked out most of the light, casting eerie shadows on the walls. As they searched the room, Aiko found a small, locked box hidden beneath the floorboards. Kenta used a letter opener to pry it open, revealing a collection of letters and a diary. The letters were addressed to various members of the Yamamoto family, all discussing the curse and the strange occurrences they had experienced. The diary belonged to Kenta's great-grandmother, who had lived in the house during a particularly tumultuous period. Her entries detailed her fears and the lengths she had gone to protect her family. One passage described a hidden room, a sanctuary where she had performed protective rituals. The description of the room matched the hidden chamber they had discovered in the basement. As they read further, they realized she had also been searching for a way to break the curse. Her notes mentioned a key, an artifact that could unlock the true power of the talisman. Determined to find this key, they continued their search, moving from room to room. In one of the guest bedrooms, they found a portrait of a young woman, her eyes filled with sadness and a hint of fear. On the back of the portrait was a note written in the same handwriting as the diary. "The key lies where the past and present meet," it read cryptically. They puzzled over the meaning of the note, the words echoing in their minds as they continued their search. The house seemed to come alive around them, each room revealing fragments of the pastel toys in a child's bedroom, a wedding dress in a forgotten wardrobe, and a music box that played a haunting melody. In the attic, they discovered a trunk filled with old clothes and personal items. Among them was a locket, its chain broken and tarnished with age. Inside the locket was a photograph of the same woman from the portrait, alongside a small, intricately carved key. Kenta held the key up to the light, feeling a sense of triumph. "This must be it," he said, his voice filled with excitement. Aiko looked at the key, her expression a mix of hope and apprehension. "But what does it unlock?" They returned to the hidden chamber, the key clutched tightly in Kenta's hand. As they approached the altar, the symbol began to glow faintly, as if recognizing the key's presence. They searched the chamber, looking for any hidden locks or compartments. Behind the altar, they found a small, intricately carved box, its lock matching the key perfectly. Kenta inserted the key and turned it. The lock clicked open, and inside the box was a scroll, its surface covered in ancient script. The scroll detailed a final, decisive ritual alone that could permanently sever the family's ties to the dark entity. But it came with a warning: the ritual required a great sacrifice. A life for a life. Aiko's face paled as she read the words. Kenta, this is too dangerous. We've already risked so much. Kenta's mind raced, torn between the desire to end the curse once and for all, and the fear of the unknown price they might have to pay. We have to do this, Aiko, he said, his voice trembling with determination. For our future, and for those who will come after us. They prepared for the ritual, gathering the necessary items and carefully following the instructions on the scroll. The atmosphere in the chamber grew tense, the air thick with anticipation. As they began the ritual, the symbols on the walls glowed brighter, the air crackling with energy. The talisman pulsed with light, resonating with their chants. The room grew colder, and a shadowy figure began to materialize, its eyes burning with an unholy fire. Kenta and Aiko continued the ritual, their voices steady, despite the fear gripping their hearts. As the ritual reached its climax, the shadowy figure let out a deafening roar, its form wavering and shifting. The talisman's light intensified, engulfing the chamber in a blinding radiance. When the light faded, the shadowy figure was gone, replaced by a sense of calm and tranquility. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a feeling of peace. The curse had been broken. Kenta and Aiko collapsed to the floor, exhausted but elated. They had done it. The family's curse was finally lifted, and their home could once again become a place of peace and sanctuary. As they emerged from the basement, the first rays of the new day's light filled the house, casting away the lingering shadows. Kenta and Aiko knew there would be much to do to restore the home, but for the first time in many years, they felt a sense of hope and purpose. Together, they would rebuild, turning the house into a symbol of resilience and renewal. The Yamamoto family's dark history had been laid to rest, and with it, a new chapter began, a chapter filled with light, love, and the promise of a brighter future. The moon cast a pale, ghostly light over the Yamamoto family home, its beams filtering through the skeletal branches of the ancient trees. The once serene garden now seemed a landscape of shadows and whispers, each rustling leaf and creaking branch hinting at unseen presences. Kenta and Aiko stood at the entrance, the cold night air biting at their skin, their breath visible in the dim light. Inside, the house was eerily quiet, the silence almost oppressive. Despite their earlier success in breaking the curse, an unsettling feeling lingered. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Kenta led Aiko into the living room, where they had gathered the artifacts and documents they had discovered. The talisman, still glowing faintly, lay at the center of the table, surrounded by old letters, diaries, and the scroll detailing the final ritual. "We did everything right," Aiko said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why do I still feel like something is wrong?" Kenta shared her unease. He felt it too, sensed that their work was not yet complete. "We must have missed something," he replied, his brow furrowed in thought. "Maybe there's more to this than we realize." As they pored over the documents once more, a sense of dread settled over them. The final ritual had indeed severed the family's ties to the dark entity, but it had also awakened something else, an ancient force that had been lying dormant, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Kenta found a note tucked inside one of the diaries, written in a hurried, almost frantic hand. "The curse is broken, but the house remembers. The past will not be silenced." The words sent a chill down his spine. "We need to go back to the hidden chamber," he said, determination hardening his voice. "There's something there we didn't see before." Aiko nodded, her fear evident but overshadowed by her resolve. They descended into the basement, their footsteps echoing through the silent house. The hidden chamber, now illuminated by the talisman's glow, felt more ominous than ever. As they entered, the air grew colder, and the faint scent of decay filled their nostrils. The symbols on the walls glowed with an eerie light, casting strange shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. Kenta and Eiko approached the altar, their eyes scanning the room for any hidden clues. Behind the altar, they found a small, concealed door, its surface covered in the same ancient symbols. Kenta used the key they had found earlier, inserting it into the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow passageway that descended further into the darkness. Taking a deep breath, they stepped into the passage, the walls closing in around them as they ventured deeper into the house's hidden depths. The passageway led to a cavernous room, its ceiling lost in the shadows. At the center of the room stood a large stone altar, similar to the one in the hidden chamber, but much larger and more elaborate. The air was thick with an ancient, oppressive energy, and the walls were lined with shelves filled with strange artifacts and dusty tomes. Kenta approached the altar, his heart pounding in his chest. As he examined the intricate carvings, he realized that this was the true heart of the curse, the place where the pact had been made and where the dark entity had been summoned. Eiko joined him, her eyes wide with fear and wonder. "We need to finish this," she said, her voice trembling. Kenta nodded, his resolve unwavering. "We need to perform the final ritual here, where it all began." They gathered the necessary items, following the instructions on the scroll with meticulous care. As they began the ritual, the room seemed to come alive, the air crackling with energy. The symbols on the altar glowed brightly, casting an eerie light that illuminated the entire room. The talisman pulsed with a rhythmic light, resonating with their chants. The shadows on the walls shifted and writhed, forming shapes that seemed almost human. As the ritual reached its climax, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, its eyes burning with an unholy fire. The figure let out a deafening roar, its form wavering and shifting as it struggled against the power of the ritual. Kenta and Eiko continued their chants, their voices steady despite the fear gripping their hearts. The talisman's light intensified, engulfing the room in a blinding radiance. When the light faded, the shadowy figure was gone, replaced by a sense of calm and tranquility. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a feeling of peace. The curse had been broken, and the house was finally free from its dark legacy. Kenta and Eiko collapsed to the floor, exhausted but elated. They had done it. The family's curse was finally lifted, and their home could once again become a place of peace and sanctuary. As they emerged from the basement, the first rays of the new day's light filled the house, casting away the lingering shadows. Kenta and Eiko knew there would be much to do to restore the home, but for the first time in many years, they felt a sense of hope and purpose. Together, they would rebuild, turning the house into a symbol of resilience and renewal. The Yamamoto family's dark history had been laid to rest, and with it, a new chapter began, a chapter filled with light, love, and the promise of a brighter future. The weeks that followed were filled with hard work and determination. Kenta and Eiko, with the help of a few trusted friends, began the long process of restoring the house. They repaired the damaged walls, replaced the broken windows, and cleared away the debris that had accumulated over the years. Each day brought new challenges, but also a sense of accomplishment and progress. As they worked, the house began to change. The dark, oppressive atmosphere was replaced by a feeling of warmth and light. The once shadowy corners were now filled with sunlight, and the air was filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation. One evening, as they were finishing up for the day, Kenta and Eiko stood in the garden, looking up at the house. It was still a work in progress, but the transformation was already evident. The house, once a symbol of fear and despair, was now a place of hope and renewal. "We did it," Kenta said, his voice filled with pride and satisfaction. Eiko nodded, her eyes shining with tears. "Yes, we did, and it's only the beginning." As they embraced, the moon rose above the trees, casting a silvery light over the garden. The house, bathed in the soft glow, seemed to stand taller and prouder, as if acknowledging the efforts of those who had worked so hard to save it. The past would always be a part of the Yamamoto family's history, but it no longer held the power to control their future. With the curse lifted and the house restored, they could finally move forward, free from the shadows of the past. Kenta and Aiko knew that there would be more challenges ahead, but they also knew that they had the strength and determination to face them. Together, they had overcome the darkness, and together, they would build a new future filled with light, love, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.